and welcome to the Ascension Podcast. My name is Illura and I'm from The Sacred Gates, www.thesacredgates.com. Today I wanted to do on the podcast just a little touching on the effect of the kinds of things that happen to our bodies and our energy and our emotions and the way we perceive ourselves and the world when we collapse certain areas of our body and when we overly tighten certain areas of our body. So just like with the yin and yang, that sphere of complementary forces, that yin and yang symbol is actually a 3D shape, and it's not just a flat picture the way you see it, it's a spinning sphere, and those complementary forces of yin and yang, electric, magnetic, and all those opposites that keeps the universe in balance, these opposing forces, these contrasting experiences that help guide us through life and do keep the universe in balance, they are always in flow. And when we collapse certain areas of our body, when we tighten and tense certain areas of our body, the flow of life force, the force of life, otherwise known as chi, becomes impeded, and it does cause things like disease. And disease can be observed in many forms. It can be experienced as physical disease in the body. It can be experienced as emotional or mental illness or, imbalance in the mental body and the emotional body. And it can also be experienced spiritually in our lives, and also our energy body is affected with all of these changes. And I recently went to my local waterfall and I took some footage of the flow of water falling from the rocks above, and a certain area had become blocked with all these like big piece of wood from a tree and lots of leaves and debris in general, a couple of spiders too. And so what I did is, unfortunately I only filmed it once I'd removed the blockage, but I took a video just of the, when you get scum on the water from lots of build-up of accumulated, basically the water is not flowing enough on one end of the spectrum. So the water is coming in, but because it's not able to keep flowing, it starts to accumulate froth, that kind of like brown yellow froth. And I'll show you the video in a minute. But I actually removed all of the blockage in the water through the debris and the wood and spiders, and the water started to kind of flow. So I just took this video because nature always gives us a really clear, really neutral, beautiful examples of what's happening on that microcosm inside of us. And it really portrays illness really clearly, and how disease is created through the accumulation of toxins, and that the chi isn't necessarily completely stopped. Maybe when we're dead it is, but in the physical body, even then we're still breaking down and decaying and our bodies are dying. But when a disease is able to accumulate, it's really when the flow of chi is blocked on some area. And what I noticed was that this brown kind of frothy yellow foam was forming because of the block. And once I took that debris out of the way, it's not like the way that water area was designed was that the brown froth didn't go straight away. It was too large an area. So it had accumulated in this kind of cauldron, in this basin, which happens in the physical body as well. And the water was flowing through, and you could actually see in this video, I'll show you now. So you can actually see, can't you, like all those bubbles and the froth? And you can actually see that there are spirals forming, that the water is coming in fresh. And it's kind of coming into this basin, this cauldron, and it's starting to move that froth and accumulated toxins in a spiral shape. Now, since I had already cleared, you can see in the top left corner where the water is now flowing. Originally that was really blocked, so probably for a few weeks. And you can start to see as the time had passed, like the froth and foam were starting to kind of pull themselves like apart a little bit and opening up into larger spirals that eventually will clear all out through that newly unblocked conduit, just like in the body. And what caught my eye about this was not only is it a very clear example of how disease forms in the body due to lack of flow of chi and energy flow, and also physical blocks in the body, such as a collapsed chest, really tight shoulders, really tight quads where the legs meet the physical body, or being really mentally rigid. So there's a lack of flexibility leading to movement, leading to flow, leading to adaptability, so not really being able to accumulate too much. Even on the material level, not owning too many things, not getting too caught up in the material level of life. So what happens is you can see that even when the block has been removed, that it takes time for that foam to spiral its way out back into the flow, which is a healthy flow, for the water to be cleaning and moving itself and replenishing and nourishing itself continually. So often when we have a disease and we start to apply qigong or other forms of healing, or even just, more Western style forms of healing, it can take time to our impatient, wanting to get better kind of mind and emotions to actually experience healing and flow again. And often when we're doing things like qigong and other energy work, we often feel like nothing's happening, or we assume that nothing's happening, or we fear that nothing is happening on the inside. But given enough time, sometimes we may be doing things incorrectly and there isn't really anything helpful happening. But that's why we need to be discerning, we need to be disciplined, and keep applying in a skillful way what we understand of our practice thus far. And often, you might clear up something emotionally, but it can take time. Just as it does in this video here, you can see that it takes time for that foam to eventually kind of get picked up in that swirl, in the change of input. So you might be changing the way you work with your energy body. You may be changing the way you're thinking and feeling and relating to your emotional mental bodies. You may be eating differently, so what you're putting in is also changing. And it takes time for the body sometimes it might be quick that it picks up things are different, but it takes time to change accumulation, especially when the disease or dis-ease, such as a sore knee or back pain, things like that, have gotten to the physical level. It's a much more dense level, the physical level, and so it takes sometimes longer for things to shift and change, especially if that dis-ease has gotten to that level. On the other hand, equally, again, another contrast, when you do sometimes change things energetically and heal yourself, it can happen extremely fast as well. But it is a good indicator here, looking at how slowly that water is taking. So I actually climbed further up to the top after removing that blockage there. And when I came back, it was opening and spreading open further, but you can see it's still taking time for that water to kind of take that foam away into the new flow, into the new stream of consciousness. And so back to the first point I made about how we can really attract negative energy and disease through these weak points in our body. So the weak points of our body consist of all our bodies. They consist of our physical bodies. We can have weak places in our physical bodies, things that we know are our weaknesses, things that we have to be careful about, things that we want to maybe change in our own physical body, in our anatomy. Often that's postural at the moment for a lot of people. A lot of people find themselves collapsed in certain areas, especially in relation to technology that we use. And a lot of us also then, of course, if we're collapsed in one area, often the opposing force will be tightness on the opposite side of the body. So in some way the body's always working with contrasts, always with contrasting complementary forces. Even though they don't always feel very complementary, the body's trying to kind of help itself out. And so we often will experience a lot of different effects. So the physical body may be collapsed or tight in certain areas, and this will often, generally always, it has to, because of the completeness of our being, it will correspond to our mental, our thoughts, our beliefs, and also to our emotions, and thus also our energy body, which affects our karmic body, our spiritual journey through life. So all of these different aspects of who we are affected by, just say, really tight shoulders or a collapsed chest. A lot of us collapse at the front here in the middle dantian, in the heart center, or really, not bending our knees at all. So kind of like standing with really straight legs, or really arched, like lordosis. A lot of women get that in their lower back. Tightness in the jaw, All of these places end up a little bit like that river that we see, the stream from the waterfall, where there's blocks and we experience, physical pain. These areas of tension shape the way we see ourselves, the way we respond to people, the way we respond to our life, the way we see life, the way we see our journey through life. And that's when we work on our physical temple, which is what at the Sacred Gates we do focus a lot on that through our product, Tayshara, opening the sacred gates of the body. A lot of it is around affecting the physical body, which I do feel is often left out in a lot of practices, spiritual practices. We get really into the energy body, the emotional body, and the mental body, but we often leave the physical body out. And when we work with the physical body and we understand how to build its foundations, we understand that it is a temple, a vehicle for our spiritual evolution in this life, and it helps us to evolve it onwards from this life. It's extremely a wonderful journey to work with our physical body. So I'd like to do some more videos, podcast episodes on different things that we can correct in our physical body. And there are certainly particular sacred gates in our physical body that we can, when we tend to them with skillful action, can really change and accelerate your spiritual development hugely. So I hope this podcast episode has been helpful in just painting a much broader picture on chi getting blocked in the physical body, also emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and how that affects us, and that sometimes it can take time for those internal spirals of energy, which are spiraling. We do very much work as a spiral, and I think the more advanced you get in your spiritual practices, wherever you are, you do start to see spirals much more linked to your own being on all levels, and we can see in that flow of water that it's just really very much spiraling and tuning into the new stream of consciousness once that debris has been moved. Thank you for listening. Bye for now.